Welcome to the class. Today we are going to talk specific stuff about two modal verbs may and might. As you understand, may and might are two examples of modal auxiliary in English language. We are going to look at what it does, how it gets interpreted, and in turn we are going to learn how to be precise in their uses when we write something or when we speak. At the same time, this information will be helpful to you in understanding when others speak, in particular those who grew up speaking English natively. That's the purpose of this exercise for today. Let's go and look at the differences between the two. First of all, a brief note. For arriving at accuracy, we need to look at certain grammatical factors. Beyond accuracy is the level of appropriateness, which is to say, the sentences that we speak are grammatical, but for larger impact, they must also be appropriate. That's precisely why we are discussing this. The role of modal auxiliary in making our language impactful is contingent upon our understanding of its intricacies, and hence this discussion. So, we advise you to go through this discussion, stop, pause, look at the details of examples, create your own examples, and then pay attention to them to get to the bottom of the fact that you can appropriately and accurately use these terms, these differences, and arrive at some higher degree of performance with this language. That's what we are going to do. So, the term auxiliary is an important one to understand. It denotes the element that come in addition to other verbs. Hence, these are called auxiliary. There are two broader types of auxiliaries. One is tense auxiliary and the other is modal auxiliary. Tense auxiliaries are elements that indicate tense. Modal auxiliaries do not indicate tense, do not denote tense at all. So, the auxiliaries that denote, so these are the modal auxiliaries like may and might. They do not have any interpretation of tense at all. Auxiliaries that have tense interpretations are like is, are, am. So, modal verbs or modal auxiliaries is, are, am, and was, were. These are tense auxiliaries. That's the distinction we need to understand broadly. So, where do we use may and where do we use might, and what's the precise distinction between the two? Before we begin, as opposed to common understanding, we need to look at these two auxiliaries independently. One is not the derivation from the other. That is, might is not derived from may. Might is not the past tense form of may. We put this emphatically underlined for you. Might is not past interpretation of may. In fact, that's the reason why we are talking about it. Modal auxiliaries are usually tenseless auxiliaries. To add a footnote here, these auxiliaries may be used in sentences which have tense in it, but they are not representing or denoting tenses at all. Let's move ahead and look at what they do and how we interpret them. So, as you see here, may is related to possibility. That's the core of its meaning. The delivery may be delayed. The moment we say this, the first thing to understand here is there is no tense here. Or if there is any tense, that is because if there is interpretation that is coming from here. May only adds the possibility of its getting delayed. The delivery will be delayed. When somebody says the delivery will be delayed, it is certain. But when the certainty does not exist, we say the delivery may be delayed. That's one of the interpretations. So, literally speaking, the interpretation of may is in terms of possibility. Pragmatically speaking, at this level, for your understanding, we use may most often when we know the certainty about the delay. It's a polite way of talking about delay. Hence, there is a distinction between its pragmatic interpretation and grammatical interpretation. Grammatical interpretation is of possibility, period. So, what is the possibility? When we say the delivery may be delayed, we are saying chances are it will not be delayed. Pragmatically speaking, we know it will be delayed. We are just being polite in informing that there is a possibility of not getting it delayed. Hope this distinction is clear to you. Like you see here, functional interpretation is the equal possibility of occurrence or not. So, when you say the delivery may be delayed, it means the delivery may be delayed or may not be. They may call us tomorrow or they may not. Both possibilities exist when we say may. That is when we use may in a sentence. So, the first interpretation is of possibility and primary interpretation is of possibility. The secondary interpretation of may, and I'll tell you why I call it secondary interpretation, has to do with permission. In a formal setting, adding the sense of politeness, the use of may makes things formal, makes things polite, because we are talking about its cross-reference with pragmatics. It's contextually situated, particularly with authority, people in authority or people with power, we use may. As opposed to this, when we want to make it little informal, we can use can. We'll show you some example of that. The difference of social power or social hierarchy is highlighted in this interpretation of may. So, that is to ask or to give permission, we can use may. May I take a tea break? It's a formal use of may. Look at the second sentence. You may carry your handbags inside the room. So, this is this uses of may. Through this uses of may, somebody is allowing you politely, that is, allowing you permission to take your bags inside the room. The pragmatic interpretation again, that is socially rooted interpretation of may in day-to-day uses of spoken English is more than the is often used in formal contexts compared to informal contexts. And alternatively, we can use can in informal contexts. So, the use of can makes the context informal, therefore we don't use that in a formal setting. May I go to the theater? Can I go to the theater? The primary distinction between the two is of the formal or informal context. There is one more specific distinction between the two, which we can keep in mind, and also the reason why can becomes informal. Can has embedded interpretation of demonstrating ability, like I can run. It shows the capability of me for running. So we, in a formal setting, we do not want to add our capability. It's a strange abstract point that I am trying to make, that in the formal context, or a better way to put the point is, if we remove capability, if we remove authority, such things allow us to interpret things in a formal way. So what makes the context formal? When you reduce the ability, when you reduce your ability to do something. In other words, we can go to the point of saying it has a sense of surrender and total dependence when we are asking for permission, and that makes things formal. So the distinction between these two examples, in short, is formal and informal, and I have just explained to you what does it mean when we say formal and informal. Another interpretation of may lies in the fact of concession. That is, the interpretation is of concession. So look at its uses. This use is meant to show that the speaker acknowledges the possibility. That is, acknowledgement of possibility is called concession of any event, and it's about its relevance. So the point is of concession. So look at the example. The school may be open on Sunday, but children will not go. And when we are talking about concession, we are not removing the interpretation of possibility. The school may be open on Sunday, but the children will not go. That is, school may be open for other technical reasons. He may be a child, but he is very wise. So these are the interpretations of concession. As opposed to that, when we talk about might, so to conclude, look at the point. We have talked about two-way distinction, formal and informal distinction. We have talked about literal versus pragmatic distinction that allows, that underplay these interpretations. And we have talked about such interpretations with one auxiliary, one modal auxiliary may. Now we are going to look at might. As I said in the beginning, might is an independent modal auxiliary. It is not related to me. It appears to be related to me because of its interpretations, not because one is present, the other is past. So look at it. This also indicates possibility and permission. So to that extent, might and may are related. Then what's the difference? If might also adds the interpretation of possibility and permission, then what's the difference between may and might? And here is what I am going to add for you, which will help you understand the distinction. That it talks about the related remoteness. So if may talks about recent possibility, might talks about remote possibility. And that is another reason why people feel it has past tense embedded in it. The distinction is not of present and past, the distinction is of recent and remote, what we know as relative distinction. So might indicates weaker possibility because it's a remote possibility. The weaker possibility provides sense of uncertainty. So it leans more towards uncertainty than towards possibility. In the sense that if we are talking about, let's say we are saying the vice chancellor may come tomorrow. So we are already talking about the possibility that he may or may not. But if you say the vice chancellor might come tomorrow, we are talking about a very weak possibility. We are leaning towards making it impossible. She's at home, but she might reach office very soon. So look at that. You can check the uses of such things for your understanding. I'll talk about that in a moment, but look at this. The remoteness of possibility can be hypothetical or totally unreal interpretation, which I have just given you the example that the vice chancellor might come tomorrow. She is a bright student, so she might become successful in life. When we say she might become successful, look at this. Here is the verb and here is an auxiliary. Therefore, we call this auxiliary. So this adds a remote possibility. She might become successful. The chance is very low. In terms of connection, the interpretation of might can be of an even less likely or less relevant situation. So look at that. This project might happen, but we are not going to talk about it now. So same thing, the vice chancellor might come. It might happen, but chances are very low. So that event might not take place at all. But we are not worried about it in the sense that we are still taking it as possibility or as the interpretation of concession. So to conclude, what I want to add at this level, two specific points to remember. May and might have similar interpretations of possibility and permission and concession. However, one is recent, the other is remote. It's a polite way of referring to impossibility. However, grammatically speaking, in a literal sense, it has possibility embedded in it as well. It has very relevant uses in our professional life, in our personal life, for better communication with people. Better communication requires strategies of possibility or impossibility. And a better way to get hands-on grasp of this, of the uses of these types of modal verbs which has intricate distinctions. Possibility, look at the text that we use. Look here when we watch something and see the uses of these verbs by other people, and that will help you elevate yourself to a point where you can use them with the proper interpretations and intended meaning. Like always, I'll stop by telling you these things, a clearer understanding about these intricacies will help you brush your language and will help you take it to a different level. Thank you.